In early 2025, a little-known Chinese startup called DeepSeek did the impossible. It released an AI model so powerful and so efficient that it sent a shockwave through Silicon Valley, wiping $1 trillion off US markets in a single week. It was China's Sputnik moment, the first concrete proof that it could compete with, and in some ways surpass, America's best AI. The industry narrative was set. A new challenger had arrived. But now, that momentum has stalled. According to a new report from the Financial Times, the launch of DeepSeek's next-generation model, R2, has been delayed. The reason? A failed attempt to train the model using domestic Huawei chips instead of America's Nvidia technology. This isn't just a product delay. It's a brutal reality check on China's entire AI strategy. And here's the real story. It reveals that the secret ingredient powering China's AI miracle was still American technology, and that the domestic alternative is not yet ready for the main stage. To understand what this failure means for the global tech war, we need to deconstruct how China's ambition collided with the hard realities of engineering, from the initial hype of DeepSeek's breakthrough to the hard wall of hardware limitations, and what this setback reveals about China's long game. Let's unpack this. To understand the scale of this setback, you first have to remember just how big the breakthrough was. When DeepSeek released its R1 model in January, it fundamentally changed the AI arms race. The shock wasn't just about performance, it was about efficiency. DeepSeek claimed to have built its model for a tiny fraction of the cost of its American rivals, an estimated $5.6 million, compared to the billions OpenAI was spending. As one AI startup CEO put it, DeepSeek proved that with smarter engineering, you actually can build a capable model. This was a direct challenge to the dominant Silicon Valley narrative that progress in AI could only be bought with brute force spending on ever more massive data centers. It was a victory for architectural innovation over raw capital, and it signaled that China had found a new asymmetric way to compete. But this software miracle was built on a secret ingredient, one that would prove to be its Achilles heel. As a venture capitalist noted at the time, the thing you have to remember is that DeepSeek was using older Nvidia chips, and the proof was buried in the company's own research papers. According to a paper cited by the South China Morning Post, its breakthrough V3 model, predecessor to R1, was trained on a massive cluster of 2,048 Nvidia H800 processors over a 2-month period. This revealed the uncomfortable truth. China's great leap forward in software was entirely dependent on a foundation of American hardware. And for Beijing, this foundation wasn't just American-made. It was a strategic liability. The DeepSeek moment proved that even China's most brilliant innovators were still vulnerable to the same technological choke point that had crippled their national champion Huawei. From China's perspective, this also illustrated exactly where the next battle had to be fought, on the silicon itself. This story of a hidden dependency, a software miracle built on a rival's hardware, is a classic pattern in technology. Uncovering these foundational vulnerabilities long before they become a full-blown crisis is the kind of analysis we do every week in our newsletter, ARPU. If you want to understand the real story behind the tech industry's biggest headlines, you'll find the link in the description. To fight the battle for the silicon, Beijing needed a national champion. And the company forced into that role was the very one that had been the target of America's first strike, Huawei. Washington's campaign against Huawei was a sustained, multi-front assault. The U.S. accused it of being a national security threat, pressuring allies to ban its 5G equipment from their networks. The 2019 trade blacklist and the foreign direct product rule cut the company off from both Google's software and TSMC's critical manufacturing. The financial damage was catastrophic. According to reports, Huawei's consumer business, once its largest revenue driver, was cut in half, plummeting to just $34 billion in 2021. Beaten down and cut off from its core markets, Huawei was, in the words of one analyst, forced to shift and expand its core business focus simply to survive. It had to become a jack of all trades. The U.S. campaign designed to cripple Huawei had inadvertently created the perfect candidate for China's self-reliance mission. The very restrictions designed to contain Huawei, as one analyst put it, became the steroids for its domestic AI development. Huawei's new mission was not just to survive, but to build a complete, parallel universe of AI technology, a full-stack, homegrown alternative for every layer of the US-dominated ecosystem. First, the hardware. Huawei accelerated the development of its Ascend series AI accelerators, designed as direct domestic rivals to Nvidia's powerful GPUs. Second, the system. Since U.S. sanctions prevent it from building a single chip as powerful as Nvidia's best, Huawei adopted a different strategy: brute force. Its cloud matrix system connects more than 5 times as many accelerators as Nvidia's top-tier rack. It's a power-hungry behemoth that, through sheer scale, aims to achieve comparable performance. And third, and most critical, the software. The deepest part of Nvidia's moat isn't its hardware, it's CUDA, the software ecosystem that allows thousands of chips to work together as one. In response, Huawei has developed its own alternative, CAN, and is now open-sourcing it in a strategic bid to build a developer community from scratch. This full-stack approach reveals the true scale of China's ambition. The goal wasn't simply to engineer a replacement chip, it was to build a complete, parallel ecosystem capable of breaking its dependency on the entire US-dominated ecosystem. But creating this new technological foundation was an engineering challenge. Overcoming the market's deep-seated preference for a mature, superior global standard was a far more complex economic problem. Huawei had built the alternative. Now it faced the monumental task of convincing a rational market to choose it. Huawei now faced a monumental economic problem. Its domestic chips, according to industry insiders, suffered from stability issues, slower inter-chip connectivity, and inferior software. In a rational, open market, why would commercially driven giants like Alibaba or a performance-obsessed innovator like DeepSeek choose a less reliable and more costly domestic platform? Huawei was now trapped in a classic market paradox. To become competitive, its AI platform needed billions in revenue to fund R&D and a massive customer base to mature its technology. But in China's hyper-competitive market, it wasn't competitive enough to win the very customers that would provide that revenue. No rational company would willingly choose a strategic disadvantage. Left to market forces, Huawei would have been locked out. So, if the market wouldn't solve the problem, the state would. According to the Financial Times, Beijing recently began demanding that Chinese tech companies justify their orders for Nvidia's H20 chips, a clear move to encourage them to use domestic alternatives from Huawei. And this pressure was applied directly to China's rising star. The FT report states that DeepSeek was encouraged by authorities to adopt Huawei's Ascend processor. This wasn't a simple business decision, it was an act of industrial policy. The strategy was clear: use state power to engineer a captive market, guaranteeing Huawei the initial customers it couldn't win on merit alone. This would provide the revenue, and more importantly, the invaluable operational data needed to close the gap with Nvidia. It was a brutal solution to an impossible business problem. The state had intervened to give its national champion the one thing it couldn't win on its own: a market. But in forcing this choice, Beijing was demanding that its most innovative company take an immense gamble, a gamble on unproven technology that would have immediate and severe consequences. But Beijing's move comes at a cost. To understand the real price China is paying, we need to look at two different technological battles happening simultaneously. First, there's the battle for the absolute cutting edge. This is where China's national champions go head-to-head with Nvidia's best technology, the top-tier Blackwell chips that are banned from being sold to China. And in this arena, the verdict is brutal. The technological gap is real and severe. The most damning evidence comes from China's breakout star, DeepSeek. After achieving its initial success on Nvidia hardware, the company was encouraged to train its next-generation R2 model using Huawei's Ascend processors. According to the FT report, the attempt failed. The startup encountered persistent technical issues and was ultimately forced to revert to Nvidia chips for the critical training phase. This technological failure created an immediate commercial crisis, a months-long product delay that caused the company to lose critical momentum and fall behind its rivals. It proves that for frontier-level tasks, China's domestic hardware is not yet a viable alternative. This is the hard technological ceiling. But there's a second, more complicated battle happening in the mainstream. This is the fight between Huawei's new Ascend P910C and the less powerful AI chip the US is allowing into China, the nerfed H20. And here, the choice for China's tech giants becomes incredibly difficult. These firms are now caught between their government's strategic imperative to buy domestic and their own commercial imperative to build the most efficient and cost-effective AI infrastructure to win in their hyper-competitive local market. On paper, Huawei's system offers superior raw performance to the nerfed H20, but achieving this comes at a significantly higher cost in both price and energy efficiency, making it a power-hungry and expensive behemoth. This forces a terrible choice: obey the mandate and build on a costly, inefficient platform, or defy it to compete more effectively in the short term. So this is the true price of self-reliance. At the frontier, China faces a hard technological ceiling, and in the mainstream, its companies face a painful commercial choice between two imperfect options. It is a costly, generational bet on self-reliance. A hard technological ceiling at the frontier, a painful commercial dilemma in the mainstream. From the outside, China's strategy looks deeply flawed, a costly gamble that is actively slowing down its most innovative companies. But this assumes China is playing a short-term game. It isn't. This is a generational bet. As one UC Berkeley researcher put it, Huawei is facing growing pains, but just because we're not seeing leading models trained on Huawei today doesn't mean it won't happen in the future. It's a matter of time. This is the core of Beijing's strategy: absorb the short-term pain to eliminate the long-term vulnerability of dependency. But to win this long game, it needs a hidden advantage, a way to offset the current inefficiency of its domestic hardware. And it has one: energy. Huawei's brute force approach, linking thousands of less advanced chips, is incredibly power-hungry. In a Western market, where data centers are already straining electrical grids, this strategy would be a non-starter. But China's math is different. Its state-controlled industry policy allows it to build out energy infrastructure at a scale and speed unimaginable in the West. According to a report from Anthropic, last year, China added 400 gigawatts of power capacity. The US, by comparison, added just 1/10 of that. This creates a powerful economic buffer. Electricity costs in the US are more than double those in China. That massive difference softens the blow of running less efficient hardware, allowing China to pursue a strategy of scale that would be financially crippling for its American rivals. The AI arms race, it turns out, isn't just about who can design the smartest chip. It's also about who can build the power plants and the grid to support a new generation of energy-intensive computing. And in that race, China is already years ahead. So, what does DeepSeek's story really tell us about China's place in the AI arms race? The R2 delay is a brutal reality check. It proves that, for now, China's most ambitious AI achievements are still built on a foundation of American technology. Its domestic hardware is not yet ready to power the frontier. But this is where the story gets dangerous for the West. The failure to train R2 on Huawei chips isn't the end of the narrative. It's a data point in a much longer, more determined effort. The delay itself is a price Beijing is clearly willing to pay. Because the real prize isn't just releasing another model. It's releasing a model trained on a completely independent Chinese-owned stack. DeepSeek's R1 gave the US stock market a jump scare. But if a future model, an R3 or an R4, achieves a similar leap forward and is trained entirely on Huawei chips, it won't be a jump scare. It could be a heart attack for America's technological leadership. The real threat to the US isn't that China is catching up, it's that they are building a parallel system from the ground up. And the failure of DeepSeek's experiment only proves how determined they are to see it through, no matter the short-term cost. Deconstructing these long-term strategic bets is what our newsletter, ARPU, is all about. We go beyond the headlines to analyze the second-order consequences of tech's biggest stories. To understand what this new era of technological division means for businesses and investors, you can subscribe at the link in the description below. Thanks for watching.